There we go. That's official. When the lights are out, it's official. So we are now going to continue our journey of talking about different ways of looking at the Earth. Our next speaker, Peter Bellerby, is an artist and globe maker and the owner of Bellerby & Co., a small studio of craftspeople and artists in London, England. This magical place, which I had the opportunity to visit, and magical is an understatement even, this magical place has its roots in Peter's personal quest to find a suitable globe for his father's 80th birthday. Unsatisfied with everything he found in the market, he decided to make his own. Peter and his team have created hundreds of some of the most sought-after globes on the planet, each one personalized and meticulously handcrafted. And after the presentation, you should take the opportunity, if you have not yet, to view our Bellerby globe in the back. Bellerby Globe Makers has been featured in numerous publications and television media worldwide and has been awarded the Queen's Award for Export twice in recent years. The title of Peter's presentation is Worlds Within Words, 21st Century Globe Making. Please join me in welcoming Peter Bellerby.
Hello, thank you very much for having me here. It's a thrill to be here. This is probably going to be the more artistic side of the events for the next few days. It's definitely a strange one for me. Let me start by saying I started out into this not knowing much at all in the subject I'm doing. It's globe making itself is a publication. I had no idea. I thought it was just creating the globe in a sphere. It's actually a publication. There are three types of globe. You can have a manuscript globe, whereby you have a sphere, you add paper to the sphere, and then you painstakingly add in all the detail. These were the earliest globes, and obviously they didn't do very long runs. They were massively labor intensive. Then we have painted globes, which allows you to do globes to a high size. And then we have what we do, which is a printed globe. So we are putting all the cartography onto the map, and then we are adding, by my team of colorists, one of whom is over here, we're adding all that paint detail in, and something like this, which is 50 centimeters, would take around about a week to do. So as was said in the intro, I started this in 2008. I wanted to find my dad an interesting present for his upcoming 80th birthday. I'd been stuck with sort of alcohol, socks and ties for years. I bought him cigars once, and he's been a non-smoker for most of his life. And I just thought a globe would be something good. 2008 was an odd year as well. I just finished a job. I'd been running, bizarrely, a nightclub in London, and I'd been doing it for 3 years. Enough of that. I wanted to go back into property developing. Then the wonderful lads in the city decided that that was a really good time to have a financial crisis, and property developing was definitely out the window. So I thought initially I was going to buy my dad a globe, and then I went to shops, I went to auction houses, I started bidding, realized it was way above, all these beautiful items here, way above my price line. And so I thought, okay, I'm not going to do what I was planning to do, so I'll get involved in and start to make a globe. Let me just move this on. Realistically, I thought, how difficult can it be? It's just a sphere with some paper on and some paint. And you might wonder, I now wonder and should have thought about it, there is a deliberate reason why most buildings are squares. I also gave myself a few months and a few £1,000s. Had I bought probably the most expensive antique globe out there, it would have been cheaper than the amount that I spent on making this very one globe for my dad. but obviously within a few months of starting, I realized this was, my love for my father was not going to stretch to this project. So I decided to set up a company. It took 2 years to work everything out. I could talk for hours about how to make a globe, but it's very interesting, but this is not the place. I then started trying to sell, and sales were coming in very slowly. I was in a little shop in Stoke Newington, North London, and then I struck lucky with a couple of big commissions. An American gentleman came along and wanted a gigantic globe, 50 inches in diameter. At this stage, I'd made 4 or 5 50-centimeter globes, and I, dumb as I was back then, said, yes, of course I can do that, no problem. Then a British-Nigerian artist came along and ordered 5 80-centimeter globes. And the problem I had now was my shop door was 72 centimeters wide. So I then had to find a new place. I moved into this wonderful premises, which you're seeing some images of, 6,000 square feet, and there were 3 of us. Now, for scale, 6,000 square feet is probably, what, 3-4 times this size, maybe a bit more, and there were 3 of us. My painter was part-time, my woodworker was part-time, and me making 1 globe every month or so. So to make it work, I turned the studio into a kind of mini WeWork situation, and I ended up having creatives from all over, from TV, from film, from advertising, art directors and things like that, making this whole thing work. And in fact, the company would not have worked had I done that, because I was at times not selling anything for months at a time. And then in 2013, I had to sell my beautiful DB6. I was very lucky. I had this wonderful Aston Martin. I don't know if anyone knows an Aston Martin car. The same thing in the James Bond movie, but the slightly longer version. I had to sell that, and I had to sell my house just to pay the bills down, because it was just sucking money at an incredible rate of knots. So then my partner Jade, who is here, who knows everything about the company, probably more than me, she joined ostensibly to answer the telephone. After about a week and maybe 1 call, she realized that was not the calling. So she said about our social media. Suddenly we had 50,000 Instagram followers. A short video I'd filmed a few years before went viral on a video streaming website called Vimeo, with 500,000 views. Sales started to pick up, and at the same time, this allowed publishers and editorial staff to see who we were, and then wanted to put us on in their magazine, on a television channel. And then so that resulted in 2015, we had a record month in June, and that was doubled every month for the rest of the year, and then quadrupled in the following January. Now the problem was training people fast enough. Then in 2017, we shot a 5-minute video to go out on CBS Sunday Morning. Now, I've been on UK breakfast television, and we've made a sale or 2. CBS Sunday Morning is a slightly different kettle of fish. Almost half a year's sales in 3 days. They repeated it 5-6 months later, same result. Someone bought our Churchill globe, our largest globe, 3 minutes into the video, having never heard of us before. He has a penthouse apartment in Miami, the door thing, obviously. So he didn't go in the lift. He had to get a crane to go 20 stories up the outside of his building. We now got up to an 18-month order book. On top of this, Jade was getting me to introduce new things and new ways of doing things. We'd started with this rotational system, but it was only for the smaller globes. She pushed me to do it for the larger globes, and then she started talking about illustrations, and I just thought, this is crazy. What I wanted to do was make a 50-centimeter globe, print 2,000 maps, and as people came along and ordered a globe, we made one and we shipped it off. Jay thought, this is ridiculous. We can do all this wonderful editing. All I was thinking is, yes, Mr. A is going to have Mr. B's edits. They're going to be continents apart. We're just going to be having nightmare logistical issues sending globes back and forth. But she's tough, so she won. And that is now the most important part of what we do. So our cartography now is a joint venture between us and our customers. And our customers will be anything, be it geologists, be they glacial scientists, people in industries, and they bring that industry to us. So we are creating a collaboration with them that suits them. So it's a very, we have obviously have our standard map at every size, and then as they get involved, we manipulate things and we add on their cartography. And the beauty about cartography is there's no overriding organization, international organization saying you can and can't do this. There are national bodies, but it's we can choose how we reflect things, and it honestly, for our customers, I think it's the most important thing. Being involved, commissioning something. It's so rare these days to commission something and to be involved in creating that thing, and then it arriving and it being pride of place, hopefully, in your living room, in your house. So I have some images now to show things that we do. This one I thought was a wonderful stick. So obviously the bathymetry we're putting on a lot of globes now. This one has ocean currents added, and in fact, this style is the same style as this one over there, which is called the Gagarin. So people, at the beginning I was doing very simple color schemes, and as we've evolved, it's become much more complex, and people want more and more detail in what we're doing. And we use this up. So this is all the coloring on this is hand applied by our painters using satellite source imagery to do that. And then a bit closer detail, so you can see the ocean currents a bit more detailed. We also do we'll add trade winds as well, depending on what people want. And that's a wonderful view of the Pacific with all the bathymetry added. The one thing about all our globes is they are unique. Every single one of them is a one-off, and I think I mean you couldn't replicate this if you tried, and it's part of the wonderful beauty of a handmade globe. So following on from yesterday, no, there's a couple more here. So we obviously we listen to customers, and I'll go back one. This customer wanted the ocean currents in, but relatively modestly, and this customer wanted the ocean currents in much more vividly. They've also got the Antarctic ice stations and all the routes that the countries who have those ice stations use, their supply routes. We do a lot of keys and a lot of legends on our maps, because obviously we're adding all this detail. We have to account for it. And that's another one. And this one you can see has also got the world's highest summits. we always will talk through things with customers. We probably would have mentioned to this customer, it's quite a vivid way to show ocean currents, but obviously it's not up to us. So following on from yesterday's, I thought I'd show these. These are plate tectonics. So we're showing divergent, convergent, and lateral. That's not the correct name, but lateral movement. And you can see there, it's a really difficult one to add onto a globe beautifully, but nevertheless, it's something that's really important, and it's usually people from a geological background who want this on, and so we tend to work with them, and it's a back and forth to evaluate how best we want to show the detail. And that's our version. I feel slightly ashamed of it now. I think I'm going to remind this customer, who we are working on at the moment, that it can be done in a slightly more beautiful way. But it's all about the customer wanting the globe represented as they envisaged. And this, for plate tectonics, that is the partition of the North Atlantic Ridge. So it's kind of, that's how they want it. And that's the most visible way of showing it, I think. Yeah, this is undersea cables. So this customer worked in the field, and he wanted the connectivity of the world's continents and countries to be shown. It's not fully accurate in terms of scale. He wanted about a 70% representation. I'm not sure why, but this is, and obviously it's not accurately following the routes the cables are on. They're not obviously going in dead straight lines, although not far off in many cases. But the thing for us that's the most challenging thing is actually, I can't really point this out without coming away from the microphone, but when a globe is obviously made up of gauze, be it 12 or 24 gauze, and making the lines across the gauze maintain integrity. For instance, when you are adding gauze next to each other, that is one thing that we spend a lot of time focusing on. It's the most challenging part of cartography, is when someone says, I did this round the world trip, and it was going via the poles, because the distortion when you get to the polar regions on a gore is dramatically more, and you will just end up with curvature that you don't want. So it's we have a team of 3 cartographers who spend hours making sure these lines are correctly applied. But even then, many times we will remake, or we will make test globes to check that the lines will match up as imagined. There's another one of the Far East. We get a lot of demand for flora and fauna, and it's really the amount of time it takes our team to paint these, the coloring of the illustrations are all done by line drawing. There's not much shading added by the illustrator. The shading, all the coloring is added by the artist. They will take hours to paint a kangaroo, for instance, and they will have brushes with half a dozen pieces coming out, and you can barely see the brush coming out of the end. There's so little. They're trying to get the most intricate detail. And animals are a very popular theme. This is birds and plants, and more birds. And these literally triple the amount of time it will take one of our painters, to paint the globe. At this stage, our painting team are always under stress. They are the ones struggling to keep up because of the demands of customers wanting more and more personalized details on a globe. Celestial Globe, in 2011, I kind of started this, the same artist who ordered these 5 large globes, which are actually global warming globes. He also ordered some smaller ones of the stars, which are like this. So just the regular, the main stars forming the 88 celestial constellations, and the stick lines between them, just as he wanted them to be an art piece, which he's a world famous artist called Yunka Shonibari, and he has these he has statues and actually has the stars as the head of the statues. They're quite incredible, and our painter was doing a great job of having the right nail coloring that day as well. So with a celestial globe, I'm sure most of you probably know, but obviously you can make them one of 2 ways. You can either envisage it as if you are at the center of the Earth, or as if you are at infinity. And so this, hopefully if I've got this right, so this is our new one that we are currently designing, and you'll see the slight difference. Oops. So Boots is facing to the left with the 2 dogs to his left, and on this one, actually he's slightly off image, but this is the other way around. It's there's not really a rule as to why you do this. It's just literally a preference, but once you've done it, you can't switch them around. It's one or t'other. So the moon, yeah, we didn't do the moon for a number of years, basically because of imagery. I just struggled to find good imagery, and then we met someone from the European Space Association, and so now we have fabulous imagery, and we get some fantastic results. I actually didn't think the moon was fully mapped, and this the husband of this lady, he worked at NASA, so they wanted all the Apollo space landings marked, and they wanted various other other things added, the Apollo space rockets, and obviously the moon lander. This is quite an interesting one. I don't know if you can spot it. There's 2, and there's this one, and there's this one. It's not Braille, but if you can see the dot going from the north western side of Russia up to the Kalot, those are tiny little dots that the couple who ordered this globe, they did a lot of traveling, and the gentleman lost his eyesight, so they wanted him to be able to feel where they had been on their routes. So this was incredibly painstaking, and if you can imagine doing this, the whole globe is finished, it's complete. So one muck up and you're having to redo the whole globe. And these are added tiny little droplets that have to be as close to the same size as possible. And you can see they've obviously added islands that they visited as well, including the ships they were on. So another thing we do a lot is portraying families' lives. So this is a wonderful family tree that our illustrator has illustrated. Just like yesterday, where you have a portion of the mapping that's not well defined, and you put a legend in there, we have areas of the ocean that are relatively blank. So we encourage people to add illustrations and things there to add to the globe. And this one is a family's life, moments in their lives, the birth of their children, their jobs, their building projects, and you can see up here as well, we have mythical creatures in the oceans depicted quite frequently, as well as real life ocean habitat. Migrations is such a powerful thing. We've been involved with some amazing customers who's plotted their families' migrations over generations. There's a wonderful story of a gentleman in Germany who then went down to Cairo, went across to Japan, came back to Northern Africa. Weirdly, this was in just pre-war, went back to Berlin, but then managed to get out of Berlin and across into North America, and now his grandchildren live the life in LA, courtesy of his persistence and getting out. And again, another one, a migration out of Sri Lanka, and adding a bit of context, adding some extra imagery of famous migrations or famous shipping that was done hundreds of years before this family moved out of Sri Lanka. And yeah, travels are something, globes and travel are so fundamentally linked. We have so many commissions from people who are either going on a grand tour around the world or have a boat, lucky enough, and do some traveling, and they want to reflect that. They want to show that and portray that on a globe, and it's a wonderful thing. We are still in touch with many customers who talk about the fact that they interact with their globe on a daily basis because it reminds them of their life that they've had and the things they've done in their life, and it's such a powerful medium to tell a story. It's always a challenge deciding how we do that. So the previous one you saw, it was yellow markings. This is red markings. We tend to suggest that dotted markings are better for portraying travel routes, but it really, again, is up to the customer. The next gentleman, we tried to persuade him 1,000 times that he didn't need to put every single route on there, but undeterred, he did. Not only that, this is the first one we made. We had to make another one because we forgot to put the labels, or the layer that had all the labels on for every single route had been switched off on my favorite program, Adobe Illustrator. And so we had to make it again. And now he's realized that 50 centimeters was not enough, so he's now just ordered a 65 centimeter. This is obviously, it's almost painful to look at. And I'm sure for any of you who are cartographers, it's a struggle, but ultimately we are doing a collaboration. We can't be grand with our customers. If they want something, we will try our hardest to make sure that we can do that in the most beautiful way. So perception and politics. We don't get many requests for upside down cartography. It's interesting. If you switch that globe around, you might understand why, because you basically have Antarctica and the tips of South Africa and South America and this enormous Southern Ocean. And doing this, every time I look at these, all I'm hunting for is the one or two that the cartographer, because each one of these labels has had to be individually switched. And I know that when they've gone to lunch one day and then come back, they've started in a different place, or the same place, hopefully, but there will almost certainly be some names that are not the right way up. But the beautiful thing about globe making is that it's publishing, and publishers always have a typo in there, sometimes deliberately, who knows. Politics is a major thing. I've just put this up there because in India, if I ship a globe to India without the correct mapping, as the Indian government require, then I can do 6 months' time in one of their local penitentiaries, which is a shame because I really love India, so I make sure I get it right. But on the occasion, we have got it wrong. And I don't know if anyone's had any dealings with Indian bureaucracy, but it basically disappears, and then there's no one to talk to, and you try for months and months and months, and you give up. It's a wonderful chaos over there in that sense, but we just can't. We have to get it right. And likewise with Pakistan, it's obviously the Jammu-Kashmir border. We haven't actually sold any in Pakistan yet, but we obviously have to have the border. The issue is it has to be a solid border at the northern extremity of Jammu and Kashmir for India and at the southern extremity for Pakistan. So I thought I would move on to a few. So this is below the cartography, obviously. The one thing we can play around with a lot is the base. There's not much we can do with the sphere. We can paint it different colors. We can add on lots more or less detail. But the sphere, the base is something we really can play around with. This one isn't quite finished. I actually have a video, which perhaps at the end Niles will come on and show you of how this thing moves. When it's finished, it's going to have a stone hemispherical circle rather than that aluminium base. But it was commissioned by someone in Ukraine in 2021, and we haven't heard from him kind of since 2022. So we don't know whether we'll ever finish this, but it's very interesting, but it doesn't really function properly. This one, so this gentleman wanted petals to support the globe. These are enormous. This is for same size globe as this one over there, 80 centimeters globe. And he wanted bronze petals. So this was a real, very interesting project. Firstly, we had to design each petal. Then I had to send it to a 3D modeler who created it in 3D printing, which was in 4 pieces. So we then had to get those 4 pieces back and glue them together effectively, and then finish them perfectly, send them to the foundry, where our foundry, I thought I knew a little bit about founding, but I don't know how they did this. The metal is 10 to 15 millimeters thick. So you are creating, I guess, a convex under and then a concave upper, and putting them together. Just sand, obviously, sand casting, and then maintaining that space without it collapsing in on each other. I know obviously they use gases and things, but it just seemed incredible to me. And we then got it back and polished the life out of it. And that's the finished item with, and each petal has, the couple have 3 children. The children's names are on each petal. And it was designed specifically to go into this recess in their room, and obviously they will populate that with other things, perhaps like flowers, I don't know, but it was specifically designed for that space. We make bases based on simple line drawings. Half our bases that we have are customers who have asked us, can you do this? And I have an inability to say no. And this for me is the fun part of globe making. I've done my bit for the making side of things. Getting involved in construction is fantastic, and particularly this one, because it was involving so many different skills and modern new skills, 3D printing with sand casting. This one is just for a mini globe, a small one, 22 centimeters. The gentleman who commissioned it is going on a 5-year, the couple who commissioned it are going on a 5-year round the world expedition in their boat. And so normally our globes of this size will have bearings like this in the same position, but they won't have arms coming up. And obviously there's a requirement for the globe not to fall out in harbour. There's a requirement for the globe to not fall out in simple seas, and then there's a requirement for it to just be stuck down. So beneath the central section is a screw where it can be screwed down onto the shelf it's going to be sat on, and then there are little buttons on each arm where there are leather strapping to go over the top to hold it in place for heavy seas. We do a lot of globes and bases for ships, and every single one has to be individually designed with specific elements to make sure that they will not fall off. Someone's even having one of like this, like David one's here, going on a boat, and we're having to create a cover to go over the top, and all sorts of elements to stop it moving. The customer doesn't want it to move when they're in harbour because it's on roller bearings. It might move like this just whilst you're docked, and so we've had to invent and come up with ideas to get over that. And you can see some of the routes that this couple are going to be following. Their boat, luckily for them, I think it was going to be 50 feet to begin with, but either his crypto did well or his business did well, so it's now 90 feet. So I think they'll have a slightly more pleasant journey. Some of you might recognize this map, but I'm factoring on the base at the moment. This was, we had to hand carve all of this based on imagery that the customer gave us. And it took, you can imagine the amount of time this would take to carve. We also do, the horizon bands are very much part of a globe. This is the tabletop that surrounds a globe. There are obviously certain things that you tend to put on there, but you don't necessarily put on the phases of the moon. The main star signs are usually on there, days of the year. You can add on detail, and customers will add on their own thing. We had one customer who his daughter commissioned him a globe, and they had something on the horizon band from 1948 to 2018 where he traveled or where he'd been in each one of those years. It's a very powerful way of telling a story off the globe. I have other things, but I think I'm running out of time. This one, just simply, I was really proud of this because someone sent this to us in February 22nd, 2020. They put down their deposit March 20th, 2020. We delivered May 28th, 2020 from that. His one was actually done in brass. I was lucky that our machinists who do all our metal work, they work in Formula One normally. And so Formula One was out, so they had plenty of capacity. So they were making these elements. I was going to the studio at the weekend. There were only 4 or 5 of us in this enormous studio by this stage. I was polishing. The brass one obviously needed to be highly polished. So I was standing in front of a polishing wheel. The one thing I've really learned with this is that metal is the most amazing material to work with. It's just a harder, more reliable, much more time-consuming version of wood. And polishing this, if it was wood, would take you half a day. Polishing it, if it's metal, is going to take you 2 to 3 weeks because it's such a struggle. But so yeah, that's really my route into cartography and globe making. I guess we can take questions. Actually, I'll quickly play this video, because sorry, Niles, because it is quite funny. Yeah. It's it has 5 bearings rather than 3, which we normally have. And actually, this gentleman is when he commissioned this, he was a steel industrialist and was going to have one of these in every one of his offices in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. But we don't know whether that's still going to happen. But anyway, any questions?
So wonderful talk, wonderful images, and you touched on this a little bit with when you showed some of the politics globes. But I'm wondering, we hear the phrase "a map is an argument" all the time, and I wonder if you've ever declined a commission because you disagreed with the argument.
Yes.
Would you share?
I get in trouble. It's obviously around the Middle East, both ways. We tend to just stick with one line, and we go with that. But obviously, we do have maps for China. We can't show Taiwan. We have maps. Not that we sell that many to Morocco, but we sold one to an American diplomat who was going to be in Morocco, and we couldn't have Western Sahara shown. There are lots of, I think it's about 11 or 12 countries around the world who won't accept the globe. So yeah, it's definitely both the beginnings and a long argument, and there's no resolution. We try and stick with what each country would like us to portray them as, be they a dictator, be they a democracy. I think it's that's our kind of standard line.
So Stacey and I share a brain, I think, because I had a very similar question, but mine is a little bit more on the design side of things. I'm a cartographer, or have been a contract cartographer in the past, and so I felt acutely the pain that you hinted at every time you mentioned sort of trying to direct your clients in terms of their design. So this basically the same question, but without the politics. Have you ever run up against sort of your design ethos about legibility and what these maps should look like, with the clients wanting to interject their design and you're not really kind of agreeing with the choices they're making, just in terms of the visual aesthetic and the visual legibility?
We will be incredibly diplomatic about it. We stated to that customer, and he's like a friend now. He comes over to London and takes us out for lunch, and we don't go on about his globe that's way overpopulated with lines. We recognize that everyone is their own judge of art, and cartography as art. So I think it's very much, if that's what they want, we will say, we've done this before and it feels quite heavy on the line work. Can we suggest that you amalgamate your 14 JFK to London routes into one line? And they're no. And what can we do?
You mentioned Illustrator. I'm wondering, do you have any other software that you use to do the vector line work?
No. No, that's pretty much all of it. We use Photoshop a bit. We use other mapping software to do certain things, but Illustrator, sorry, I don't know where you are. I can't, sorry, but it's, no, it's Illustrator. I suppose just because there's no pixelation, we have to use that. It's the best one for us.
Do you use Map Publisher at all, or just straight up Illustrator?
We're using Map Publisher at the moment. We're actually doing a commission for someone on the East Coast for a 60-inch globe. So it's going to be bigger than we've ever done. So we're now going to have to get a cherry picker to. We can get the two halves. We're having the pattern made at the moment, so it'll be two halves. We'll take those upstairs into the studio, where this part of the studio you can see here. We'll join them together. Then the only route out is through the double doors that go out onto our summer terrace outside, and then we'll have a cherry picker to lower it down into the truck for shipping. Yeah, we're using Map Publisher for that. We're getting much more into doing mapping. I don't know why we call them flat maps. I guess we make globes, so we have to differentiate. But we're doing tons of flat maps at the moment, world flat maps of individual countries, and Map Publisher works, I'm told by my lead cartographer, amazingly compared to any other software, saving us tons of time.
This is wonderful. Thank you very much. I want to make a comment about whether I want to ask whether you've ever been commissioned by someone from the Flat Earth group, but I imagine not. But among the most beautiful maps in David Rumsey's collection are the tiny travel globes, often made, in the 18th century, where they have a globe and a carrying case made out of snakeskin or something. What is the smallest globe that you make, and does it come with a carrying case?
It does. I think I haven't met you. Are you David's wife?
I am on that.
Okay. I think he might have one. I think I might have. Yeah, we never. I think what David has done is amazing. Doing all this, putting all this incredible mapping, and allowing the world to see it. And he's pretty much the only person I've ever gifted a globe to, because my partner doesn't let me do it. But no. But I just thought I thought it's such an amazing thing, and so that is. And I actually have one over where I'm sitting. We call it a pocket globe in honor of the pocket globes that obviously back in the day people had cloaks, and they actually had huge pockets. So these little pocket globes, often made with I think fish skin, covers. So how that worked when it got hot, I don't know. But yeah, that's 12 centimeters is, and obviously cartography on that is super, super difficult. Most of Europe is just Europe, which is perhaps where it should stay.
Thanks so much for the talk. It was really fascinating. I was wondering whether you could say a little bit more about the kind of themes that your clients are interested in. So you mentioned travel is something that comes up. You mentioned climate change as well.
Yeah, climate change, it was one we did for an artist. So it's obviously the globe is colored according to temperature changes over the last X number of years. We don't tend to do many other globes like that. Most of our globes stick to a pattern, be that like this one. It seems a shame we haven't got any. Actually, no, if you see downstairs that amazing, what do you call it? The illuminated, the digital one downstairs, that has some of our maps on which have a more standard coloring, which is basically one coloring for the continents and one theme of coloring for the ocean. But in terms of portraying other data on our globes, not really. It's more about portraying the globe as either in this sense, a geographical globe. We do political globes, so we will color quite beautifully each country a different color based on its population size, but not other data in a sense, if that's what you're asking.
Thanks very much. I loved your mention of the care and it takes to align things that cross the Gore lines. So from a sort of a practical perspective, one of the really beautiful, flexible things about your designs is because they're on the rollers, they don't have to be polar oriented. Have you experimented with gores that are not polar oriented, especially if people didn't want Latin long lines?
No, we haven't. We haven't. I guess we haven't been asked.
I ask
we tend. We've grown very organically over the past decade and a half, in the sense that when someone asks for a design for a base, for instance, half our bases are, the name of them is the name of the customer, because they've made this design, so we've named it in their honor. So yeah, I think it's a struggle enough doing it pole to pole, doing it to other points of reference.
The Arctic is always so ill-treated on many cheaper globes, and I love the attention on yours. So maybe as more Arctic melts, you'll have more commissions.
Potentially.
I was going to ask what the process is like for finding people to train in your studio. It's like, I don't know of the standard career path, or if people have a background in painting that get into be your painters. Yeah, it just seems amazing that you can produce so many globes when I personally don't know any experts in globe making in San Francisco.
I mean, we're not making that many. We're only making 40 or so a month. So our painters often have come from art school. 3 of them at the moment teach at the Royal Drawing School. They're fantastic at in watercolors. Our makers, that's the difficult thing. Realistically, our makers we have at the moment, certainly the 2 best ones, are better than I ever was when I stopped making sort of 8 years ago. They both come from a kind of miniature model making background, dealing with things, small things that are really pernickety, and that's what you have to do. You have to. When I was doing this, I started learning yoga at the beginning to train my body to slow down. I'm like most people, when you get older, get more and more impatient, and changing to a career at 42 where I was going to have to learn to become more patient was quite difficult. Yeah, that's their main background. But when we're training, everyone, other than the painters, everyone learns everything about what we're doing in-house. Even our woodworking team, we try and get them at an earlier stage so they don't come along with their perceived way of constructing things. They learn everything as we are doing them, because when we're making a stand for a globe, you're making a wooden element like this to go around a globe. It's a really tough thing to get right, to make sure those joins are bulletproof, because customers will lean on them. You have to, the one thing I definitely learned about this at the beginning was the word over-engineering, because the first commission I had was from Australia. And so and now 85% of our sales are all international. We can't afford for things to go wrong. But no, we will have people training for a year and a half to make. And I've had some tough conversations after a year and a half. They just, and it's usually the patience side of things. When I think about the people who have left, it's their lack of patience in being able to accept that they're doing this thing every single day and they're not getting any better. And you can spend a month doing it and you're just going nowhere. And you've just got to calm down, think of yoga or whatever, and it will come to you eventually. Well, it won't. That's the problem. It won't come to everyone. It's a really difficult skill to master.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah, there's a whole branch of mathematics that deals with projecting a flat sheet of paper onto a sphere, where you have the unavoidable distortions. So is that a factor for you? I mean, have you become a mathematician in this process, dealing with all that?
We're basically using an equirectangular projection which is the simplest projection that you have from a spherical globe, and we're just kind of returning the favor, going backwards. So we're replicating the world as it is in reality. I always tend to call projections distortions and then get in real trouble from a room like this. But no, I used to kind of say that at the beginning that all the errors that occurred in globe making you could multiply by pi, because it just seemed everything, when things went wrong, they didn't just go wrong by a small amount, they seemed to go wrong by a lot more. But no, I'm reasonably versed in maths, but not, it hasn't been the biggest challenge. The biggest challenge realistically is awareness of us as a company, because we're not making that many objects. So we rely, and we do no advertising. So we rely on word of mouth. And when you're only making a few tens every month, that's quite a difficult thing, which is why I end up with journalists probably twice a week, and we shoot, I guess, half a dozen videos a year from television stations around the world as a way of PRing the company. I still hate every single moment of it. Thank you.